Hey guys, it's Ray J here, but my IGN is Quantux on League of Legends. I'm going to be doing this Vladimir guide for you guys, learning you how to play the Vampire God because he's actually my favorite champion. I know a lot about him, and I actually think he's being a bit undervalued for his rework that was actually looking pretty bad at first, but is actually pretty good now. So yeah, hope you enjoy. Let's get right into it. Right, so the start of the video will be more for the people who are new to Vlad, which means we're going to go over his ability and his skill order. Then we're going to look at basic stuff like summoner spells, the options we got there, before looking into runes and masteries. After that, we're going to look at the item builds, which I prepared a couple of them for you guys actually, before finishing it up with some gameplay tips, including some laning phase advice. So let's make sure you're ready to suck some blood on the rift. Alright, so let's look at Vladimir's spell. Vladimir's passive is Crimson Pact. Every 25 points of bonus health gives Vladimir 1 ability power, and every 1 point of ability power gives Vladimir 1 bonus health. So basically, he gains more stats from building HP and health, so you want to prioritize those, but especially AP over health because the AP to health conversion is really big compared to the health to AP conversion. Then you have Transfusion, which is a point and click blood sucking ability, which does a low amount of damage, but after you use 2 Q, you get an empowered Q, which deals a lot more damage and gives you a big heal that scales with missing health and your AP. So basically it gives you a lot of HP when you're low, but when you're like full health it doesn't give much. Then we have Sanctuary Pool, which is basically Vlad goes into a pool where he's untargetable and you can use it to dodge CC or damage, like shown in that little clip. Next is Tides of Blood, which is a spell that you charge over your head, and it's kind of a skill shot because as you can see they put minions here because it's blocked by minions. So for example, if Darius was behind those minions, he wouldn't have taken the damage from the spell. So yeah, that's the ability. And finally we have Hemoplague, which is Vladimir's ultimate. It puts an infection on the enemy, which lasts for 4 seconds, and increases the damage of everything on the target. So towers, minions, champions, your team. So they take a lot of damage and then it detonates after 4 seconds, dealing a lot of damage and healing you for a lot of HP. So those are Vladimir's spells. Alright, so let's talk about the summoner spells. Most of the time I play mid lane, and my preferred spells are Flash and Ghost. I think that Flash and Ghost is the best setup because Flash is just standard and Ghost got buffed pretty hard with the increased movement speed per level and the cooldown of 180-second base. But I run Insight Mastery in the result tree, and I also run cooldown boots, which reduce the cooldown of Ghost. So in total, it goes down to 135 seconds, so it's pretty much like Ghost becomes an ultimate, which is pretty broken. So yeah, I think Ghost is a staple spell, and it affects the game a lot more than your Ignite that you pretty much use in lane. And also, I don't think Ignite is really useful, because if you're playing well, you'll always finish off your targets, and yeah, you won't need to Ignite them to make sure they're dead. But you can also run Ignite if you prefer that and you don't like it. For the top lane, you usually run Flash and Teleport, but you can also run Ghost and Teleport, which I've ran a couple times. And yeah, so that's pretty much it for the summoner spells. Alright, so for the runes and masteries, list of the runes. So this is my standard page I run most of the time. I have 2 movement speed quints with 1 scaling CDR quint. I have 9 magic pen reds, 9 armor seals, 3 scaling CDR glyphs, and 6 MR glyphs. So why only 2 movement speed quint? Because I don't feel I really need the 1.5% that is missing, especially with the ghost buffs. It's pretty much always up, and yeah, it gives you the move speed you need. I'd rather have a scaling CR quint because it gives 5%, which is a lot, and it allows me to run a lot of MR glyphs, which I think are really important because in the laning phase I like to play a lane dominant play style, and if you have no MR in your room, you're gonna get crushed, you're gonna get poked out, especially against meta champions like Azir. So you need that MR to be able to fight in lane and be a tough lane opponent. Also, for the armor seals, pretty much standard that people run health or health per level seals, but I don't have those because I like using my IP on champions. So yeah, you should run health per level or health flat health seals, but armor is also fine if you don't have health. You can also run the standard AP page if you don't have scaling CR quints or movement speed quints. You can even run 20% CDR in your runes if you prefer having a build path that doesn't have much CDR, when I'll show you the builds later. So yeah, that's pretty much it with the runes. Right, so for the masteries, this is usually what I run. I run Assassin for lane dominance, Savagery for better CSing, Merciless because you don't have mana in the game, pretty standard. Intelligence over precision, because I value having that 5% CDR over the penetration. And why is that? It's because your Q, especially the powered Q, is such a staple spell that having that CR cap increased to get the lowered cooldown on your Q is actually saving you a lot of time to get your next empowered Q back. So it's important to run intelligence. And that's why I value running cunning over 18 in resolve, because some people run strength of ages, which I will talk about later. So yeah, I run Thunderlord's Decree over Storm Raiders and Wind Speakers because, as I said before, I value having a strong laning phase, and with Thunderlords you can snowball really hard because it adds a lot of burst damage to your combo, and it also procs on your pool really easily for some surprise burst damage. And yeah, Storm Raider Surge, I don't actually think the spell is that good on Vladimir, and also because I run Ghost, I pretty much have a good movement speed at all times when I need it. For Wind Speakers, it adds 10% healing to your heals and shield, which actually is kind of decent, but using a keystone for that, I'd rather have lane dominance, especially since runic armor gives you 8% stronger healing, so this is only 2% higher, but I'm using a keystone. So it's kind of awkward and sad if I would waste a keystone on something that I can just use a normal point to get. Yeah, in Insight, in Resolve, I run Unyielding for the bonus armor and magic resist. I run Explorer because I don't value tough skin that much and I like to roam. And some team fights in Baron and Dragon, it gives you a lot of movement speed. Runic Armor, as I said before, it's really good. And finally, Insight is actually really important because it makes that ghost go to 135 seconds cooldown. So yeah, it's really good. Other pages you can run, 18 Resolve. You can run this, which is also good. Um, we didn't talk about the Ferocity tree, so obviously Sorcery for the damage, Beast for more sustain, Vampirism more sustain, and Depressor because you usually have Rylai's and your E slows. Yeah, Unyielding, all this we already talked about. I value Swiftness over Legendary Guardian because even if you're in the middle of the enemy team most of the time, it doesn't give that much stats, and Tenacity is really good, and it also stacks a bit with Merc Tread, which I usually run if I run this page, but it's still pretty rare that I run this page. And Strength of Ages because Grab does half effect, and Bond Stone is actually pretty bad, especially for you. So yeah, I don't really like the tank page with Strength of Ages because it's really long to stack in lane, and yeah, I like having a dominant laning phase. I would actually run this if you value having more of a tanky playstyle, if it's more for you. Don't have having a strong laning phase, you want to scale more, and yeah, it's pretty good for that. Also, maybe in lanes that you think you're gonna lose, maybe going that path is better for you. So yeah, you can pretty much do what you want with those, but I would run the Thunderlord's page if I were you. Yeah, this one. That's it for the Masteries. Alright, let's look at the items because I have a lot of stuff to talk about here. So first off with the starting items, I extremely recommend Boots of Speed with 4 health potions. That's because Boots of Speed give you like the biggest lane dominance because since you have the boots, your empowered Q, which deals loads amount of damage, you're gonna be able to get it off a lot because when you get the small speed boost, all your opponent does is run away. But usually, nobody starts with boost except like Akali, which is like pretty annoying. So yeah, when you have boots of speed, what you can do is always Q your opponent in lane, and there's nothing you can do about it. Other good start are Ruby Crystal because it gives 150 health, which adds a lot of damage to your E and gives you more Q healing. Tome is not bad if you want to accelerate your build path, but only do it in easy matchups. I like getting refillable if I'm into a poke matchup because even if you have like health pots and you waste a lot of gold on those, in a poke matchup, you won't be able to go Q minions if they can burst you like while they're off your screen, which is pretty cheesy. So yeah, refillable, I like to go that in poke matchup. The Dark Seal, I like going into the Dark Seal if, for example, before the game you look up your opponent on NAOP and you're like, okay, this kid's pretty bad, or you're just really confident into the matchup, you can take the Dark Seal to snowball and get a lot of stacks. Then the core laning items, in my opinion, are Lucidity Boots because they give you cooldown, they give you more move speed to spam that Q on your opponent, and Hextech Revolver because I like rushing Hextech Proto Belt because it's really cheap and it gives good stats for Vladimir. Especially the Revolver active, which as you can see does 75 to 150 bonus damage on an auto attack every 40 seconds, which is a lot of damage. So it adds to that lane dominance with Thunderlord, and it's also counts as a Thunderlord stack. Seeker's Arm Guard, it's a situational item, that's why I put it there. And to hard AD matchups, but I would only build it maybe against Talon because I think that is an easy matchup. Hunting guys, it's also good when you're facing opponents that in their rune page they run no MR glyphs. Basically, what they have is set up with pretty much 30 MR from like the start of the game until they get an MR item. So you can cheese them by pretty much doing true damage because you're gonna have about 29 flat pen with your runes at some point. So yeah, it's pretty good in the laning phase. Also magic pen boots, you can do that. Kindle gem, good CR item, health, good stats on plat. The best build in my opinion is Proto Belt, Rylai's, Zonia's, Rabadon, Spearsvich, and Warmog. I think that Proto Belt is the best starting item because of its cost and its active deals a lot of damage to have a good laning phase. Rylai's is just really cost efficient, gives you slows on your Q, which is really good. Zonia's is just broken on Vladimir because your ulti, when you get it off on like a lot of people, you can get at least more than 1.5k HP, 2k HP. And if you want to be sure to get that healing before dying, you can just Zonia to wait for your ult to detonate and then you get all your HP and you're back in the fight. Rabadons because your passives gives you so much health for building AP, so if you have high amounts of AP, you're gonna get up there in terms of your health and ability power. Spirit Visage, it's just a good item on Vlad, increases your healing, MR, but sometimes you don't need it. I build it a lot, but sometimes I don't. If you're into heavy AD teams, I like Warmogs because it gives a lot of health. It lets you pretty much sustain forever and you don't really need to recall. And health gives a lot of damage on your E. For a more tank build, if it's more your playstyle to be a tank, you run straight to pages, you like playing tanks, this is what I would run. The Deadman's Plate is actually pretty good for keeping a high amount of movement speed. What you can do is just pretty much not auto attack. You lose a bit of damage, but you're gonna be so fast always because you pretty much keep your momentum stack. So all you have to do is QE, and your spells are pretty much always up on Vlad. And yeah, this would be the tank build that I would run if you want to play tank. This is the Magic Pen cheese, as I call it. Like into those opponents who don't run a lot of MR, those squishy teams to do true damage to them. So this is kind of the build I would run. Not exactly that, but something I would. This is a cool build. I like to call it the passive build. It's like when you're into a lane opponent that just wants to hug his tower and not do anything because he's too scared. This is the build I think that skills the most on Vlad. Yes, there is a rod. I know it gives mana, but compared to before, it only gives 400 mana now. And yeah, it's not really much of a mana item now because it gives more HP than mana. Also, it gives 100 AP when it's fully stacked, and it costs pretty much nothing. So you get 500 health and 100 AP before counting your passive, compared to Rylai's who gives you 400 health and 100 AP, but it's like 600 gold more. So this item is actually pretty broken. And if your lane opponent is not doing anything, you can afford to build it because the build pad is pretty bad, but it won't matter if your opponent isn't doing anything. So yeah, you build some health AP items, and then you build the Rabadons to multiply your AP stat and health stat, and basically this would be the most passive efficient build that you could find in my opinion. These are just situational items that I buy sometimes. GA, Rand wins into pretty much full AD team, Yasuo team, and yeah, these are the division stuff. So that's it for the item. Alright, so for those laning phase tips, we have our
30 seconds
item
until
sets here.
minions spawn.
We're gonna grab our boost with 4
A
health.
summoner has reached.
So in lane, what you want to do is try to res at level 2 with his DS, and try to zone your opponent with your empowered Q. The key to the laning phase is really to keep up that Q phase. You want to use your Q every time it's up, because after the first time you get your empowered Q, the empowered Q is going to be on every second Q instead of every third one. So if you don't use it, the bar will deplete itself and you will have to start over the process. So that's really the key to the lane phase. Also, there's a thing you can do when you're top lane. You can start with Krug. Instead of going directly to lane, you can just Q the Krug, which will give you a Q stack before heading into lane, so you can get the Q zoning faster. You might have noticed I quickly opened the option menu during little gameplay there, because I wanted to switch my E from quick cast to normal cast, because I feel that it's easier to land those weird combos that I will talk about later if you have your Q on normal cast rather than quick cast. Alright, so since I just became level 3 in this game, I can talk a bit about the skill order early game. This game I went for 2 Q points and 1 E points and no points in W, because I was getting shoved in on the tower, so I was pretty sure I wasn't gonna get ganked. So I didn't think I would need pool, and also having a second point of my Q gives me a lot of damage on my Q, the poke. So yeah, usually you can go QW at level 2 if you think you're gonna get ganked, and if you don't think you're gonna get ganked, you usually go P at level 2. And yeah, those are the skill order tips I can give you. So in summary, zone with your empowered Q. And you can also use jungle camps like the raptors, like I put it right there, to keep your Q phase going. So, for example, you don't have anything to do anymore, you can ward over your raptor camp and do it to keep your Q back. Alright, now we can talk about general gameplay. First up, buy Proto Belt. Item is really good, sets you up great ultis like that hit a lot of people, and then you can just pull out all your damage. It's just a great item and it gives great stats on Vlad, so I recommend it. Next item up, buy Zonias. It gives you a lot of utility, it gives you armor, it allows you to stall for your ulti healing, which is really important now because the ulti healing is so broken. And also it allows you to make nifty plays like this because it cancels your E but it still deals the damage. So if you have an invisible opponent that can cheese you like Shaco, I didn't know really where he was, so I just zoned it to make sure he couldn't E me. And yeah, detonated the E around me and luckily he was there so he died. This is a tip I've never seen any Vladimir player do, and I think it's really nifty and tricky. Now for Vladimir's W, I have a couple tips. Some are really obvious and some are more advanced. So one of the keys to Vladimir is making the most use out of your W, because a lot of times I see people only using it to escape, and they forget that it can also be an offensive spell. You can use it to dodge CC, you can use it to dodge eye damage spells, you can use it to stall for the huge healing of your ulti, you can use it to reset tower aggro, and don't forget it heals for the damage it deals. So yeah, you can use it under the most targets as you can, and also using it under minion waves is actually pretty useful for more healing. Also, since it's a damage over time ability, you can use it to proc Thunderlords by itself. So, for example, if you're laning against a decent opponent, he will probably abuse the cooldown downtime of Vladimir, especially in the early game, because his cooldowns are super long. So, if he is low and he all-ins you, because your Q is down, you can use your W as a mini burst spell to bait him, and then boom, he gets burst. And if he survives, the pool should have stalled a bit of time for your Q or your E to come back up to finish him up. Also, another tip, because of your pool, sometimes in the mid lane, Zed is a champion right now that is pretty broken, and since there is no Q assist, he's banned a lot, but sometimes he goes through and usually is picked when he goes through. So you can ask your mid laner, hey, I can go up against Zed, because usually players don't want to go up against Zed because he's an annoying champion. Because with your W, you can just pretty much dodge his ulti, so every time he ulti, just pull and bam, it deals no damage. So yeah, going up against Zed is no problem, so you can do that for your team. For some smaller tips, you can buy Swifties to kite better, stick better, and it also reduces the self-slow of your E, so that's a cool trick. You can flash during your E or W, which is a good tip. Sometimes it will come in very handy. And you can also ghost during your pool, which makes you actually really fast. Like the first time I tried it, I was actually like, what the fuck? It feels faster than Heckran. So yeah, that's another thing. Alright, so now I'm gonna talk about one of the most important things about the new Vladimir, and that's his all-in combo. Basically, most of the time you're gonna be doing it with Flash because you want it to be unpredictable, and it's pretty hard to pull off in the laning phase because of the minions that get in your way. So the plan is to flash while you're charging your E, then you can use your empowered Q, and then you W in on the person to make sure he dies and you get out. And I had a lot of replays of those, but for some reason my replay program isn't working, but I remembered seeing it pulled off in the LCS, so I decided to use that play instead to show it to you guys. So basically he has his Q stack ready, he flashes in, he EQs really fast and W's
that's a
out.
first blood for Fox.
This is really basically what the combo is, and also when you get level 6, you can use your ulti before popping your E. In this example, his ulti was down, but if he added up, he would have ultied before popping his E, Q, and W really fast. So that's your all-in combo. You can also use it in the top lane in a really cheesy way. What you can do is charge up your E while you're in a bush and do the same combo flashing out of the bush. Your opponent will never see it coming. All you'll see is someone popping out of the bush really fast and he'll blow up and he will probably rage in chat. So yeah, that's your all-in combo. So here we are finally for our last tip. And in this one I'm going to be talking about using your E into your W to make some crazy outplays. It's my favorite move on the new Vlad and I use it pretty much every game now. To do this, I'm gonna use a pentakill I pulled off in rank a couple weeks ago or days ago, because once again my replays aren't working, so this is the only example I could find because it was already up on YouTube. So yeah, I'm gonna be just going over replay. So I'm going in right on the tower. I see them all grouped up. I use Pro Belt as the ulti. Once again, Pro Belt is just so good. The crazy ulti healing that I get here. I chase with Ghost. I love Ghost. Ghost is good. And yeah, the key moment is gonna come here. I charge up my E, but I don't want to get damaged because if I take just a bit more damage, I'm probably gonna die. So what I do is I see an opportunity to go into W because they are kind of low health, and if it works, they will probably die and I will survive. So yeah, let's see what happens. So my W finishes and suddenly Vladimir blows up. I kill Tristana and then I kill Annie and I pull off the pentakill. So really using your W and your E together, you have to use your E before using the W, and then it will pop while you're in pool and there's pretty much nothing they can do to dodge the damage except being behind a teammate or minions. So yeah, it's a really easy way to pull off your E without getting CC'd or dying, and you should use it every game to be successful. So I hope you enjoyed the video and that you at least learned one thing. I'm only a gold player, so I'm no prophet, but I'm pretty sure that I showcase things that would have made you thought otherwise. This guide took me a really long time to do, and I know it's pretty long, so I'm sorry about that, but I really wanted to make sure that everything was in this Vlad Bible, that you knew everything about the champion. And yeah, you can also use the table content to just find what you want, so maybe it was shorter for you. So this was actually my first time doing a guide, first time doing commentary, and also my PC and recording software aren't really so great, so I'm really proud of this video. So I would really appreciate if you could at least leave a like or comment and subscribe for more. So have a good day. Ray J signing out. Peace.